Whoa.
No, the island's down there. Wow, you got a cobra.
Man, this doesn't do it justice, this video. You did it! Good job, Ab!
Okay, well, welcome guys. Good morning.
Good
My name
morning.
is Kim. I am the park assistant here. I've been here 8 years. Tell you a little bit about our history. We are a part of the Pine Mountain Range. We have multiple Native American sites in this park and on the WMA. We have the WMA west across the river and the WMA east on this side over here. It's something that I know that they used to catch fish.
A rock weir,
Okay.
W-E-I-R, is a rock formation in the river, in the shape of a wide V. And the Native Americans would build that. My dad used to do it as well. And they'd get the fish inside that V, that weir, and they would be at the end with nets, and then people would get at the front top end of it and run the fish towards the opening, and then they would trap them in nets.
This area was cultivated by Jephthah Spurl. That's how Spurl Bluff got its name, but and I don't know how the spelling was different because his name was actually S-P-R-U-I-L-L. So I don't know how it becomes somewhere that the spelling was changed, but it was cultivated by him. We have a rocky land, very hard to farm. The habitat is, our forest area is burned on a 2-year cycle. It opens the forest floor, bringing back longleaf habitat, which is great for the wildlife, you know, for every year for the wildlife. Back in 2023, I want to say, the DNR released the red cockaded woodpeckers here in Spurl Bluff, in different locations here in the park and also in the WMA area. The red cockaded woodpecker has not been seen since the 90s. Alright, we have a sandbar, what we call a sandbar, and it's actually like a cobble little beach over on this side, over on the right. The Split River is one of 40 rivers that is unimpeded for over 200 miles, meaning there's no dam or anything to stop it up. Back in the 70s, somebody wanted to dam this river, but former President Jimmy Carter is the one that vetoed no dam in this river. The sandbar, or our natural dam, if you walk to the right, all the way to the end, you will see, we call it a natural dam. It's rocks that go all the way across the river that looks like a dam. It's one of many great spots to fish along this right here, down here. The Flint River is home to the shoal bass, spotted bass, catfish, otters, beavers, we have them out here, the Barber's map turtle, long-nosed gar, and the spotted bass is invasive. And every year we'll do a spotted bass fishing tournament to remove the spotted bass because they are invasive, taking over the shoal bass. And I have a shoal bass handout. Water safety. Let's talk about water safety. If you're gonna get on the water, find a buddy. Stick with the buddy. Stay with your buddy. If you're in a kayak, canoe, anybody under 13, it's a law that you have to have a life jacket. Life jackets are required in the boat. A perfect float would be 8 foot. Many people will float kayaks, canoes. Also, they'll do tubes down here. There's a lot of shoals. I personally wouldn't do tubes, but you know.
When's the fishing tournament?
We usually do it around August. Yes, ma'am. This is the Longleaf Pine Trail right here. And this one right here will take you to one of the overlooks. There's no trail that goes up to the overlook on top except for the Widowmaker.
Okay. They don't want to hear nothing about the Widowmaker.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Are there some sites or some historical things that we can see on one of the hikes?
Yes, ma'am. The Longleaf Trail right here has, there's double chimneys where we believe that Native Americans were set up down this way. And there's open wells throughout the park that have fencing, you know, around. On our Widowmaker Trail, it's not necessarily, I mean, it's historic, but it's not like Native American historic. But on our Widowmaker Trail, we have 2 old cars. I would say maybe from the 30s. Yes, sir.
Why do you call it the Widowmaker?
Because it is our toughest trail. Going towards the top, it's very, very steep, and it goes like this, and it's very narrow. So some areas you may be walking like this, and it's very, very, very steep. Yeah, I think he knows more. That's what they call the Cove.
Up the river, probably
15
8
miles.
yeah. There's a place called the Cove, and the theory is that it's from meteor impact.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool.
I want to go.
You would not regret it. It's a beautiful spot.
Yeah. Now there are different caves throughout this park. There's one across the river right here. I've never personally been in them, but I've spoke to people that have been in the cave.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
How high has this river gotten?
I have seen it. I've been here 8 years, and I've seen it as high as 23 feet.
That's what I was thinking. Okay.
Yeah. As high as like
The
pavilions will be underwater.
Yeah.
I mean, not completely under here, but it's standing water in the pavilion. Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and address this. I was gonna bring it up in mine, but my dad was born 1927 up this river at the mouth of Pigeon Creek, where it flows into the Flint River. 1927. How many years ago would that be? Where's my math person?
I'm 7.
Go ahead, how many years would it be? If he was born in 1927, how many years would that be?
97?
97 years, almost 100 years ago. And he took me to some caves up the river from the mouth of Pigeon Creek. And he said when I was young, I'm descended from Creek Indians. He said we would come here and hide until they left. And they would go in caves. But these caves are not along, it's not a rock house mountain, it's not along the Flint River. It's in a very secluded place, but he took me to these caves when I was in my early 20s and told me that they used to go into these caves and hide until people that they were fearful were going to remove them left. So, and it's on the WMA, and you used to could drive close enough to it that it was a fairly short walk. Now it's a long walk. Sure. Thank you, Kim. There's a perfect history about this area.
Yes, thank you.
And I was going to start off with the fact that my dad was born 97 years ago up this river. I don't know how far the mouth of Pigeon Creek is up here. It's not real far, but it's up there, couple 3 miles perhaps. And why are you being born along the Flint River in 1927? Because you're living a rugged, secluded life. And age is catching up with me too, so I have to get these out so I can read. I made some notes. I don't want to bore you. And if at any time, raise your hand like you did for Miss Kim, and I'll try to answer your questions. But before I start, I do want to share this one thing with you, okay? And I'm not here to bore you. The title of this is The Long Walk, and I wrote this in 1999. Just came upon my heart about how many Native Americans lived in this area, but they had to hide their identity. If you go down past 36 Bridge, which is about 4 miles south of here, Matt and I were talking about it earlier, there was an Indian reservation down there, a little over 600 acres, called Chamali Reservation. The government gave Native Americans that land to live on to get them out of the way. And a few years after they gave them that property, they told them to get out. They wanted the land back. And the chief, his name was, his Indian name, I do not know the Creek words for it, and there's some speculation that they were Creek, there's some speculation that they were Cherokee, but basically his name interpreted as War Dog. And after the government came in and did their thing, the story is, nobody in here knows where the Cove is. If you don't, it's up the river about 8 miles, and that's where I was living there. I was born there. Actually, my mom and dad took me into town. My mom gave birth there, took me home to a house that was built in 1860s. And my bed was a dressing room. But pertaining to the Native Americans, and the title of this is The Long Walk. They told us it was in our best interest to leave. They needed our rivers, our home, our trees. They told us they needed our land. All of this they needed to carry out their plan. The long walk, the long walk, the long walk. They broke every promise they ever made to us, then looked down upon us in total disgust. They wouldn't listen to our soft and gentle talk. Blue-coated soldiers forced us on the long walk, where children cried and the old ones died, to Oklahoma, to a faraway land. How could so few make such demands? So many of us died along the way. We would have lived in peace if we could have only stayed. But they needed our rivers, our homes, our trees, and under the soldiers' long knife we had to leave. And I wrote this in recognition of the hardships. My great-grandmother was Creek Indian, and the story has it, and I was told this as a child. I was told this by non-family members, but I was taken aside when I was young and told that that my great-grandmother was Creek Indian, and that people, even in the Cove, even though there were other Indians there, they would not accept her because she was Indian. And then my grandmother started making medicine out of plants, out of herbs, and started getting people well. And my uncle, just a few days ago, said that people would bring their babies to her when they had the throat, and she would take them off by herself and be gone for a few hours, and when they came back, the baby would be well. And the story is that when they found out what power she had, what talent she had in healing folks, she became accepted in that area because she was a healer. And my uncle has told me this, and I've heard this story years ago. I'm 73 years old, and I heard this story when I was 10 or 12 years old, that they did not call her by her name. They simply called her the Indian woman. Take your sick to the Indian woman. She will get them well. We've got artifacts up here, and you're welcome to look at them. They're from all periods of time. There's 4 basic periods of time. There's the Paleo, which is about 10 to 13,000 years ago. Archaic period, which is 10,000 to 2,500 years ago. The Woodland period, and I'll point these out when you come up, and I can tell you which period they're from, is about 2,500 to 1,000 to 2,500 years ago. And then the latest period was the Mississippian period, which is about 400 years ago. Who speculates why Native Americans stopped making artifacts? Tell me. Flint, why?
Because they ran out of material because they went on the Trail of Tears.
That's a good point. Yes, that's a part of the reason too, because a lot of them moved away, and the ones that stayed didn't want to be noticed. Plus, the Europeans brought with them metals and stuff like that, and it was just a whole lot easier to go and trade for a shotgun, if they were, rifle, whatever. It was just a lot easier to get supper with something other than something that you see up here, including this blowgun. But that's not, that's important. But another fact that I want to point out, I've pointed this out to y'all, I'm sure, that the Creek Indians called the Flint River by another name. It was called the Thronatisca. And there used to be a sign down at 36th Bridge that had the word Thronatisca written on it, and it's gone now. They took it down. Why? Well, there's obvious answer to that, but it was Thronatisca, and that simply means Flint picking up place. So I wanted to point that out because we talked about a lot about the Flint River. But the first time, when I was a young kid, before this park was ever here, I stood on top of that mountain over there. And you can call it a hill if you want to, but unless you've climbed it, you can't really appreciate it. My dad brought me to that spot years and years and years ago, and we overlooked the Flint River. But there's also importance in colors and directions. The Native Americans, you can see it on this ribbon shirt here, that they've got this up here, this round circle. And that is to represent northeast, south, and west. And colors associated with northeast, south, and west. West, the color for west was black. The color for north was red. The color for east is yellow, where the sun rises. The color for south is white. But those colors also represent other things. East is we're being born, bright, beautiful color. And west is when we are reaching old age and about to die, and the color to represent that is black. But there are things that I want to share with you. If you have questions about these artifacts, the fact is that all of these artifacts came from parts of Georgia. A lot of them from up in the Cove area where my family was. One thing that I do want to point out that I'm sure the guys will, come here, Flint, you're gonna be my model today. I've done this to you before, haven't I?
Yes.
What do you think this is for?
Necklace.
It's called a choker. Anybody have any idea why they wore chokers? Why? Well, number one, it's beautiful. But they get in battle. Go ahead.
It looks like it was a necklace, but it was tight, so they called it a choker.
Yeah, it's called a choker, and that's the reason it's called a choker. Thank you, Flint. But it's also to protect the throat during battle. You don't want your throat cut, so you wear this to help protection. I'm not an expert on Native American artifacts. What I want to share with you today is some of the things that I was taught by my great-grandmother and my grandmother. Is that, as I've shared with you before, my dad was born up at the mouth of Pigeon Creek in 1927, 97 years ago, when there were no cars, no vehicles. He was born there simply because that's the only life they knew, and they walked wherever they went. And we talked about hunting and fishing before, that if I shoot it, I eat it. If I catch it out of the river, I eat it. And I was raised that way. I ate so many yellowcat when I was growing up, and so many quail growing up, that people considered it a delicacy, and I didn't. I mean, you know, but if we shoot it, we eat it. Everything but a possum. But I'm sure I'd eat a possum. And we're at my grandmother's house in the Cove. If it was on the table, you didn't ask her what it was. There's some things that I'd like to point out, especially, well, to all of us, that your elders, your grandparents, even your mom and dad, you have to respect them. You have to listen to them. You may not always agree with them, but respect and listen to your elders. When my grandmother died, I realized what I had lost. And I had two grandmothers, yes, but my grandmother in the Cove, she helped raise me, and she taught me all about how to survive on the land. So she taught me a lot. And some of the few things that she taught me about is, I remember one time I was rambling around in the yard, the porch. I could not be still. Today they just prescribe a medication for you and settle you down. And my grandmother looked at me when I was just nonstop on a porch. She said, "Keep looking, you'll find it." And she got my attention, and I said, "What?" She said, "Keep looking, you'll find it." She said, "You'll find your spot." At home, do you have a particular place that you sit down?
We do, yeah.
Yeah. Me too. And my wife sometimes will be in my spot, and if I walk in, she just gets up because she knows that that's my spot. But that also refers to other things in life, not finding a spot where you sit down or you feel comfortable, but in life, finding your spot. What do you love? What's your passion? What do you want to do? And that's the kind of thing that our ancestors, my Creek ancestors, passed down to me, is find your spot, find where you're most productive, find where you're happiest. Because if you're happy in life, then you're going to enjoy it, and you'll carry that on, but you'll also pass it down. The other thing that my dad went out of his way to teach me these things, but my grandmother did too, my Creek Indian grandmother, is pay attention to your environment, the things that are around you. I was with my dad one day. He said, "Do you smell that?" And I said, "What?" He said, "It's rain." I said, "And it was like this." I said, "Daddy, what?" He said, "It'll be raining tomorrow." He said, "I smell it coming." And so my dad could look at the things around him. He could feel it in the wind. He could feel it in the air, and he could predict the weather. He didn't need to cut the TV on to get a prediction of the weather. He knew what was coming, and he could predict it. But my grandmother and my daddy, and every time I hear this bird, I think of them. It's the rain crow. How many of y'all know what a rain crow is? You ever heard one? And some folks say that it's a mourning dove. You hear that bird in the evening sometimes, and they're out there going, ooh, ooh, ooh. Well, I've researched it because I'm that way, and that there's a difference between a rain crow and a mourning dove. And I was with my grandmother when I was about 10 years old. She said, "Do you hear that bird?" I said, "Yes, ma'am." She said, "That's a rain crow." She said, "In 3 days it'll be raining." So every time I hear that rain crow, I keep my eye on the weather, and 9 times out of 10, it's going to rain within 3 days. So the rain crow. And we also, and in keeping in line with this too, listen to the earth. Listen to what the earth tells you. Just like today, it's a beautiful day, gentle breeze. The leaves are falling. I mean, enjoy it. Listen to the earth and what she brings to us, because it brings us peace. It brings us happiness. And if we look for the bad in life, then that's what we find. Don't look for the bad in life. Look for the good in life. I've already told you about the caves. The caves are very important. I took my daughter and my brother and a few other relatives, close relatives, to those caves. And I want to get back to them, but I'm getting some miles on me now. It's a long walk to get to those caves that my dad took me to. The last time I was there, I wrote down the name of my kinfolk that was with me, put it in a tiny, small plastic bottle, put the top back on it, and I left it at that cave, not to bring shame to that cave, but for whoever else might find that cave one day, they'll see that they're not the first to have been there. And I asked an aunt of mine one time why we didn't celebrate our Native American heritage, and she said we couldn't. She said we couldn't when I was young because people were still being removed in the early 1900s, and we were afraid to celebrate it openly. I get tickled. I make notes, and I don't want to bore you with my notes. And how many of y'all have a nickname that Mama, Daddy call you? All right, you over here with, who is that on your shirt there?
Mario.
Mario. What's your nickname?
Chiquito.
Say it again.
Chiquito.
Chiquito. Chiquito.
And what does that mean?
Little one.
Huh?
Little one.
Little one. Well, I think he's grown out of that nickname. I like it. It's really neat. Another one. Somebody else said a nickname. What?
Mine used to be Hot Rod.
Hot Rod. Okay. Anybody else? Okay.
This is Ant-Man.
Ant-Man. I love it. My dad had names for all of us. Yes, ma'am?
My name is Abby, and my nickname is Abby Kadabi.
Abby Kadabi. I love it.
I like that.
Well, you know, my dad had names for all of us coming up, other than our given names. Sometimes my nickname was hard-headed. He thought I was stubborn and resistant, and that I didn't take orders too good. My son, he called my son, I never heard him call him by his given name. My son's given name is Chance, but my daddy always called him Smokey. And Callie, our daughter, he always called her, he called her Sweet Pea. And I hesitated on Sweet Pea because my brother later started calling her Cornflake because her name is Callie, and I don't know. But we had like Kellogg's. But my dad always had other names for us, and I wonder sometimes if that was the Indian side, because I was Hot Rod.
Hot Rod.
How old are you?
11.
11. I was about your age, maybe a little bit younger, before I learned my dad's real name. My dad everybody called him Junebug. He sent me in the store one day, and I said, I'm here to pick Junebug's shoes up. And a woman looked down at me and smiled and just thought it was kind of cute that I was asking for Junebug's shoes. So when I got back to the car, I asked my daddy, I said, Daddy, what's your real name? And he said, it's Warner. And he laughed. He thought it was kind of funny that I was asking him what his real name was. And that's a part of the Native American culture, is that you have names that are descriptive of your personality. And the name given to me by some of our tribal members is Quiet Dog. And it's, you pronounce it Yamase Ifa. And I said, why Quiet Dog? He said, because when you come to meetings, you sit there and you're always alert, watching and making sure that everything is safe. And it's really a name of honor to me. But names are very important. And another thing that my daddy taught me, and you young guys and ladies and even mamas and daddies here, y'all hear this. Yes, I hunt. And unless I'm going to eat it, I don't shoot it. Is I had shot a deer one afternoon. I went home and got my dad. And it got dark quick. And my dad was helping me trail this deer. And I noticed that he kept looking back. And after about the third time of looking back and then looking forward, I asked my dad, I said, Daddy, I said, why do you keep looking back? And my dad was not a philosopher, but what he told me has stayed with me my entire life, even now, and I apply it to all aspects of my own life. He said, you can't know where you're going unless you know where you've been. You can't know where you're going unless you know where you've been. And every time I was tracking a deer for my grandson the other day, who's about to be 14, and I caught myself looking back because I was trying to figure out the direction of this deer. So, and that applies to all aspects of our life. You can't know where you're going unless you know where you've been. So, being raised by folks born in the Cove up here. If you've never been to the Cove, if you ride through there, there's only one eyesore up there. No, those satellite dishes are up there. They built them up there to supposedly track other satellites, but the speculation is now that they put them in the Cove because it was in a river basin, and it's a 5 miles across the mountains, and it's just one giant meteor impact site. And the only eyesore there are those satellite dishes there. And the speculation now is that they were put there to track UFOs. So go to the Cove, you won't be disappointed. I won't take credit for this. I read this. It was Creek Indian, it was in Kansas, I think, made the statement one time. And some of you may have Native American blood in you. You just need, if you don't know it, I'd recommend that you research. If your grandparents are still alive, go talk to them and talk. But this guy made the statement that Native American blood is like gold. No matter how thinly spun it is, no matter how fine it is, it still shines just as brightly. And this came from a full blood who made that statement that if you have a drop of Native American blood in you, then it's still just as bright gold as any of the rest of us. Gold is gold. It's like if you find a meteorite stone, it's just as precious as that giant one that's hit the earth before. Another thing that has happened to me in my lifetime that these artifacts represent, this actually was picked up in a place called Cove. You know where Cove is?
I do.
Yeah, it's on that side of the mountain over there. Picked it up in a field, permission that I had. Yes, I hefted it myself, And the first time I looked at it, I just walked right by it, and then the rock spoke to me. I used to go to collect artifacts, not for selfish reasons, not because I wanted them, but because it put me in touch with my past. I had a buddy of mine, anybody in here from the Pine Mountain area? Do y'all know the Rileys over there? Okay, guy, Lee Riley. He and I used to go and we'd look for artifacts because we were in love with the past, and we wanted to know, in order to preserve the past for the present, you have to stay involved. And in that particular field, I would find artifacts that he'd walk past. But for some reason, my grandparents were with me, my grandmother and my great-grandmother, and I just started this chanting. It's a low, like I was singing, but it was just a chanting I did. And what I would do is I'd chant and I'd think about my grandparents. And he said, I can't find the stuff that you find because you've got folks who are not here with us helping you spot them. And I'll never forget the fact that he said that. He said, you've got an advantage over me. I can't compete with you in finding them because you've got folks who are not here anymore helping you. But these artifacts they've been a blessing. I met a gentleman a few years ago, and I think maybe Emily, I've shared this with you. The guy's name was Lou Tulu. He's all the way in Georgia from Washington State. His wife called me one day and said, I need for you to come and be with my husband. And they were in Columbus, Georgia at a hospice center. And they had told her that her husband would not be alive come daybreak. And this is their words, not mine. And she said, you're the only Native American that we could find in this area. Will you come and be with Lou in his last hours? Well, I went down there, and I'd never met these folks ever before. So I'm sitting there, and Lou is staring off upward, and he was with the Confederated Tribes of out of Coveville, off the Coveville Reservation in Washington State. And I sat there and I literally prayed over him for an hour, and he was looking up, and she said he's seeing a vision. That's what he's looking for. Folks, what happened next to this day is astonishing to me. I stayed there for about an hour and I prayed over this man, and I looked up, and without thinking, I looked at his wife and I said, Lou is not going to die tonight. Lou is not going to die for a long while yet. And everybody stood there in shock at the words that I have spoken, and I'm sitting there, what just came out of my mouth? A year later, we're in Warm Springs at the Bullock House having lunch with Lou and his wife. A year later. And Lou lived another 3 years after the doctors had predicted he'd be dead before sunrise. And I'll never ever forget Lou Tulu from the Confederated Tribe out of Coveville, Washington. The other blessing that I've had in my life, nothing like what happened with Lou and me seeing his life being spared in a vision, is I met a guy named Sam Proctor. And Sam is a Muskogee Creek from Oklahoma. And where did I meet Sam Proctor? In the Cove. He came to the Cove as a visitor because he was in the area and he wanted to see it. And I met him down there along the Flint River. And Sam Proctor and Sam was old enough to be my daddy. But just the time spent with him. So what I'm saying is that my heritage, my experience, and I used to, when I do presentations, I would wear the ribbon shirt. And if I go to a tribal meeting and our tribe is centered in Pensacola and there are events going on, I'll wear the leggings and the ribbon shirt. And every bit of this is handmade. I mean, yes, sewing machine on the ribbon shirt, but those leggings, handmade. How do I know? Clint, take those leggings out and hold one of them up. Because I made those leggings myself. And you can just take it loose and hold it up. And my dad, we talked about hunting, and I was paying attention to what everybody was saying. If I kill it, I eat it. And I told you all about the catfish and the quail. But my dad used to take me turtle yegging with him all the time, and we'd get in creek banks, and we would track turtle in the creek, and he had a gig that he could put up under the bank and pull the turtle out from under the bank. But he knew the turtle was a loggerhead. That was the only kind of turtle that we would eat. And in this river here, and in ponds, my dad could track turtles while they were in the water. And he did that by seeing the turtle stick his head up, and then he would track the bubble trail that the turtle left. And he taught me that. I've done it once, but when I was 3 years old, before my brother was born, so I know I was 3 years old, he caught a loggerhead turtle that weighed 89 and 1/2 pounds. 89 and 1/2 pounds. Somebody asked me if we ate that turtle, and I said, we fed off that turtle for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. And the reason I bring that up is that I saw my grandmother, my Creek Indian grandmother, she was actually half-Creek, in town one time. They grew what they ate, they raised their own animals, and they lived off any game that anybody would bring them, fish and so forth. We took some fish to her one day, and to my grandmother, and I went back. I got home and I got back, and I thought, I'm going back and get one of those bass heads, and I'm going to mount him and put him on a plate, just a head alone. I got back and I said, Granny, I said, you got those bass heads here? She said, yeah, they're in that pot over there boiling. And she didn't waste anything. And she, even the innards of a cow, y'all know what that makes. The guts make sausage and stuff out of it. Nothing went to waste. That's how they grew up hard, so nothing went to waste. Any questions? No questions?
I don't have a
Go ahead,
question.
Kim.
I just want to tie into what you were saying about the direction with the colors.
Yeah.
They also used to bend the trees as arrows to direct them which way they were going.
Signal trees.
Mm-hmm.
There's a guy in North Georgia, Don Wells, who studies that, and he's been all over the United States studying the bent trees. And even my dad told me about that. And we were hunting in those mountains in the Cove, and he said, we got to go this way. I said, how do you know that we go this way? He said, look at that tree. So, yes, ma'am.
How long did you live in the Cove?
I was born there. They moved us out and moved us into Milltown in Manchester when I was 6 years old. So it'd be easier for me to access the school system over there. But I go to the Cove every single week, just to be there. That place calls to my heart, and I miss being able to ride those mountains in the pickup truck. And the only other crazy thing about the Cove is my mom worked in the cotton mill in Manchester when we were living in the Cove. She backed up to the window we were in one day, opened the trunk, and I'm just going to call it what it is. There was a black panther. She had ran over a black panther, loaded that thing in the trunk of the car, backed up to the window, And there it was, a black panther she had ran over. And people say, nah, no black panthers up here. Well, I guess I was in my late 20s, maybe early 30s. I was riding those mountains in the Cove, which basically is across this river here, right here. And if you went up that hill there, let's say you had a four-wheeler, and if you was at the top of that hill, and you drove in that direction for about 4 miles, you'd be in the Cove. And that is some beautiful country there. You could drive into Cleveland, and you can access this and drive it either in a Suburban or a pickup truck, and you can probably see for 20 miles up there. It's I think about that sometimes. There's one point up there at the top of one of those mountains. I can look down to the mouth of Pigeon Creek, and I'm thinking, in 1927, my dad was born over there. It's just incredible. So these artifacts here, the oldest one in here would probably be, it's called a bowling bevel. The point is like this. It's not chipped out on both sides, it's like this. And the way they made them was with a piece of big bone, and then they would take a particular rock that they used, flint, and those kinds of rocks. Just not all flint. The flint is the white ones here. And the white ones are the youngest. This the granite, the quartz. The other, but they would chip them out. I've got a friend of mine who makes them, and he does an immaculate job of them. But these axe heads, the drill points, these axe heads, all of these were found not too far from here in Georgia. So this is a good representation of the life that was lived here and how heavily populated it was. And even in my lifetime, my ancestors had to hide the fact they were taught as children not to talk about being Creek Indians. Yes, sir. Tornatisca.
Can you shoot the bow gun, or is it yours?
Your daddy told me not to let anybody shoot this thing. All right, I'm gonna nobody's mouth's been on the end of this in years and years, but I'm gonna let you come puff it out and we can watch the dart blow out.
What an honor, Flint.
You need to come.
What an honor. Lucky you, buddy.
I tell you, try to hit one of those orange cones with it. You got to hold it up. You got to hold it. Oh, there it went. You see it? Did you see where it went? Keep going, 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 going. I'm looking at the spot right now. Keep going, going, going. Stop by your right foot. Right foot. There you go. But anyway,
Wow.
birds and squirrels. Not everything was taken with a bow and arrow. That's all the demonstration we're going to do on this. I
That's
hope.
awesome.
Because I don't want to lose an eye and be responsible for that. But,
What's it made out of?
Do what?
What's that made out of?
I'm not sure. A former chief of mine who has since passed made this and gave it to me, and I can only imagine the trouble that he went through to make this.
No kidding.
But it's immaculate.
Yeah.
The drum, I do want to mention this. I'm not a drummer, I'm not a musician, and you can't even get a good beat on because it needs to be in the sun. Stretched out represents the heartbeat. So when you see those folks at dances and playing the drums, this represents the heartbeat of the earth and the heartbeat of us. My brother had a guy make that for me. A friend of mine made this is out of fox, and the only thing I don't like about it is the fact that he made it out of a fox. Now, whether he shot that fox or what, I don't know, but as Emily knows, foxes mean a lot to me. Emily, can I talk about your book for just a second?
It's your book that you gave me.
I'm not here to sell books, but in a dream, and I think this is important for all these children especially, in a dream, I dreamed that I was going to the Oak Mogi Mounds. Who knows where the Oak Mogi Mounds are? I know it's up there over in Macon. And I dreamed that I was trying to get to the mounds, that I was walking. And that every time I could get within view of the mounds, I would get turned around. And then as I got close one time, I was attacked. And how many of you ever heard the story about Bloody Bones? Okay. Well, in the dream, I was attacked by what I described as Bloody Bones. It was nothing but a creature that was mostly bone with a little bit of blood on it, with a little bit of meat on it, and just bloody, bloody, bloody. And I was right on the verge of death when all of a sudden a fox came running out from under a house, a little bitty fox, and put Bloody Bones down and saved my life. Well, in the dream I had gotten angry, and I went over and I picked up a big rock, and I was going to take it over and smash Bloody Bones' skull in. And Fox, who I refer to as Strong Fox, said, don't do that. That's what he wants you to do. He wants you to get angry. He wants you to retaliate. If you smash him, you'll bring him back to life. And so I apply that to other areas of my life in that sometimes I don't agree with what somebody else might be doing, but I refrain from attacking them. And sometimes it's easier, sometimes it's hard to be a peacemaker. I've got one person, and not my wife, I love my wife, that all they want to do is argue. And I continue to be the peacemaker. And I think about that particular dream, is that Strong Fox said, don't do that. That's what he wants you to do. He wants you to lose your temper. He wants you to be retaliatory, to get revenge. Let him be, and you're done with him. So walk away from it. So somewhere Emily's got a book, Strong Fox, and that was the inspiration. A story about a little fox who helped a little boy realize his strengths rather than his weaknesses and move forward in life. Fusses at me sometimes. Said, you don't even know that guy. How you? But anyway, I'm a peacemaker. But y'all are welcome to come by and look at the artifacts. And some of these artifacts are 10,000 years old. Some of them are 500 years old. But I found this axe head here, and I hafted it myself. This arrowhead hangs in my living room, just as a reminder of where scraper there.
Okay, okay.
But
An arrowhead.
yeah, this was probably used for shooting, with a.
Can you imagine if they carved
and
that?
this is what we call a bird point.
That'd take a long
Okay,
time.
so for shooting birds. Oh, here, let's.
Very, maybe out of a blowgun.
Okay. So the drill, would it have been I forget what you call them. What would the rest of the
These
drill
are
look
different
like?
kinds of bow and arrow stuff.
This is the drill here.
You know, I got that fox in the
And,
freezer.
They just
Bow
vary.
and arrows.
They do like the stick
got
and
that
like it
box
almost
in the
looks like a
freezer?
bow that's wrapped around it and do it back and forth.
Or by hand, drilling through leather.
Oh, really?
These
Okay,
are-
okay.